As the film opens, we find ourselves on a massive, desolate island in the middle of nowhere. With nothing but water on all sides, this remote region is completely cut off from the rest of the world. One day, a young lady called Zoa wakes up on the shores of the island with no memory of how she got there. In the most recent 12 hours, the lack of human contact has made her frustrated, so she decides to look about the island. In the subsequent minutes, Zoa discovers an empty bottle on the beach. The act of taking it up brings up painful memories of the circumstances that led to her being on her own. The action jumps back in time to when it all started, a week ago. Once again in the city, Zoa comes home from a hard day at work to a warm greeting from her younger sister Gabi. She goes to bed shortly thereafter and is taken aback by a mysterious text message from an unidentified number. While Zoa's first impulse is to ignore the text, she ultimately decides to respond to the unknown number. In response to questions, the identity of the anonymous texter as a correspondent for an upstart beverage firm called Eden was revealed. And he lets Zoa know that she's been invited to the company's big celebration. The unknown sender of the text message claims that the event is an all-expenses-paid vacation to a tropical island where they will have a great time. Thrilled by the prospect of going to a free island party, Zoa gladly accepts the invitation. However, before she accepts the offer, the reporter lays forth some ground rules. 2 rules. 1. Don't tell anybody else where it is, and 2. Don't bring anyone else. Despite her skepticism, Zoa decides to play by the rules so she won't be rejected. She prepares to go the next weekend and heads to the designated pickup location. Zoa and her best friend, Judith, proceed to the hidden spot together despite the company's restrictions. When they arrive there, they run across another invitee called Aldo, and the 3 of them are brought to an abandoned building by a robot. The little plane eventually takes off, leaving the group behind a closed door. A few seconds later, a guy in a mask enters and ushers the 3 into the building, where they meet and mingle with the other guests. Lucky for them, a fleet of party buses is on their way to whisk everyone away to the island without making them wait too long. The partygoers pile into the van, and the driver cranks up the tunes for a night of dancing on the way to the venue. They arrive at a port after what seems like an eternity, and the disguised organizers lead them to a boat. However, all guests on the cruise must first go through a security checkpoint. Judith recoils in fear at the sight of this as she hasn't been invited, but she nonetheless makes her way toward the gate. Her risk paid off, and she was welcomed into the organization without an invitation. All of the visitors are subject to a comprehensive search and metal detection procedure. As a further criterion for boarding the vessel, they are also required to turn in their mobile devices. Instinctively, the partygoers are dubious, but they finally comply with the organizers' requests and hand over their mobile devices. Aboard the yacht, they set off for the tropical getaway after finalizing their plans. The group arrives at their destination about an hour later, when they are greeted by ushers who issue them each a bracelet. As soon as they get situated in, the drinking and dancing begin. At the party, Zoa meets a man called Daniel, and the 2 hit it off right away. Astrid, the event's main organizer, has a big news to make in the middle of all the fun. She says the launch party had 100 invitees. But out of 100 people, just 5 will get to sample the new energy drink being offered by the beverage firm. Africa, Ebone, Charlie, Aldo, and Zoa are among the chosen ones. 5 partygoers are given the unknown beverage, which they all down in a flash. Judith, meantime, makes her way through the throng to a tent on the island's beaches as she continues her hunt for Zoa. There, she witnesses 2 of the event's organizers assaulting a guy before drowning him in a barrel of water. This immediately spooks her, and she bolts off to keep looking for Zoa. Zoa, on the opposite side of the island, is hallucinating and wandering in circles as a result of her bad response to the mysterious drink. She climbs to the edge of a cliff and is about to plunge to her death when a mysterious stranger approaches and rescues her. Still hallucinating, Zoa eventually falls out and spends the night dozing off on the ledge. The film then immediately cuts back to the beginning. Alone on the island, Zoa decides to go exploring after waking up. Luckily, she tracks down the other 4 visitors who drank the mysterious drink, and they set out to discover the island's secrets together. Hours later, they give up the hunt and return to the boat to find that everyone else has departed on it, thereby abandoning them on the island by themselves. In the midst of deliberating their next move, a drone emerges and directs them to a mansion on the other side of the island. They arrive on the island and are taken aback to see a small community of island natives led by Astrid, the island's chief organizer. She tells the group that the business boat abandoned them and that they are now safe in contemporary society. But she reassures them that the ship will come back and gives them a place to stay in the meantime. In spite of her relief, Zoa still feels concerned for Judith after hearing this. Meanwhile, the 5 visitors are spread out among different apartments and forced to interact with the residents. Quickly, Zoa travels to her assigned flat, where she meets her new housemates Claudia and Nico. Nico is the mysterious man who saved Zoa the previous evening. Zoa expresses her gratitude for his assistance, and the two quickly become fast friends, as Claudia observes them in silence. The next day they wonder where the boat is and if it will arrive today. Unfortunately, the tides are too powerful for the boat to land on the coast. Despite their disappointment, most of them accept this as fact and have a good time on the island anyhow. However, Aldo, who has always been a skeptic, begins to doubt the island's activities and becomes tired of its organizers. When the next scene begins, Zoa recognizes one of the islanders, Orson, from a very distant past. After some thought, Zoa recalls that he was with Judith the night she arrived. She follows him around suspiciously and presses him for information about where she last saw Judith. If anything, Zoa's worries about her friend's safety are amplified by Orson's hostile behavior and denial of ever meeting Judith. Orson leaves and Zoa sprints toward the main house, but only for a moment. There, she witnesses a therapy session and is astonished to find every island resident participating. Astrid notices her when she walks in and quickly encourages her to join the workout. Zoa is first reluctant to participate in the program, but after some convincing, she agrees to do so. The main organizer presses Zoa with questions regarding her upbringing and family history, as well as any traumatic experiences she may have had. Zoa had a difficult upbringing because her mother was a heroin addict and her father was rarely around. Therefore, she was responsible for Gabi, her younger sister, on her own. Zoa is pleased when the session ends and Astrid gives her a hug and says some encouraging things to her. When they wake up the following morning, the group is told that the boat would be there the following day to transport them back to their homes. The visitors are overjoyed by the news, but Aldo is still wary of the locals and plans to depart the island under his own terms. While that is going on, the remainder of the party blends in with no trouble at all. After playing a sad piano piece together, Zoa and Nico rapidly get close, and Ebone forms a friendship with a local. Astrid and her husband, Eric, celebrate their guest's departure with a farewell party that night. While everyone else on the island is out having a good time, Aldo is out exploring the countryside and comes across a cargo boat unloading its cargo into the shoreline. Aldo sees his opportunity to go and immediately returns to the group to share the news. So far, he has only located Charlie and shared his scheme with him. Aldo is forced to flee on his own when an inebriated Charlie ignores him. Quickly, he swims back to the island's shoreline and boards the vessel. At last safe on board, he takes refuge amid the goods and sleeps off his anxiety. A number of hours later, Aldo is jolted awake by the boat's motor giving out. He hastily ascends to the observation deck, where he is shocked to discover that one of the islanders is looking intently at him. Aldo obeys her orders and kneels in front of her, staring at her with apprehension. She quickly produces an instrument and uses it to stab Aldo in the brain. Because of this, she is able to murder him instantaneously and bring his body back to the island. The group and island are immediately exposed as a cult with Astrid at the helm. She gives the islanders strict orders to use their charm on the visitors so that they never leave. The next day, before the boat arrives, Zoa takes a shower and gets ready. She is so happy to be back in her own house that she decides to go find the other visitors. Yet, she soon learns that Aldo is absent and shares this news with the others. Charlie, upon learning the news, explains to Zoa his escape strategy and remembers his meeting with Aldo the night before. This news has caused Zoa a lot of distress, and she has become increasingly wary of the islanders as she eagerly awaits the day she can finally leave. Astrid, meantime, was hard at work hatching a plot to entice the visitors to remain. Africa and Ebone, swayed by the islanders' promises of safety, decide to stay and commit themselves to the cult by signing individual contracts. After returning to the city, Gabi seeks solace from her drug-addicted mother regarding her missing sibling. Thankfully, they are able to contact a police officer who then reports Zoa missing. However, this is mostly fruitless because the cops aren't making any proactive efforts to locate her. Gabi, frustrated, attempts to persuade her mother to take more serious action, but her mother ignores her. After Gabi's patience finally ran out, she went looking for Zoa in her bedroom. In telling Gabi about his time with Zoa and the subsequent trip to the isolated island, Daniel describes their initial meeting and the events that followed. Intrigued, Gabi decides to meet with Daniel in the hopes of learning where her sister may be hiding. The islanders then gather again for their regular treatment session. This time around, Charlie is the lucky one who gets to tell his tale. He, like Zoa, is hesitant to join the session at first, but Astrid manages to convince him to participate. Charlie goes into detail on how the death of his younger sister has caused a rift between him and his mother. As it turns out, his carelessness led to her tragic death as a child. Because of this, his mother has always despised him and seldom communicated with him. This news brings Astrid closer to Charlie as she offers her comfort. Zoa, however, sees through her pranks and has a ferocious outburst before she can finish the lesson. She accuses the people of fabricating the story that the boat had arrived and blames Astrid for convincing them to stay. After Zoa becomes enraged, Nico separates her from the group and invites her to meet later that night if she is interested in learning the truth about the island. Zoa doesn't understand what he's saying, but he agrees to meet with him later. Later that night, Nico takes her to a cave and reveals a dead body laying on a makeshift wooden table within. Zoa is shocked to realize that the body atop the pile is indeed Judith's. At the episode's conclusion, Zoa lets out a scream while tears stream down her face.